welcome to Your Voices, Power and Patriots. I'm your host, Buzz Patterson. I'm joined by my two brilliant hosts, Bree Dail and Matt Dooley, and welcome to a very special Memorial Day edition of Power and Patriots. This is a very special time in our country every year that we celebrate, we honor those that have gone forward. We're three people, Army, Air Force, and Navy, that actually came home from our deployments and our involvement overseas, defending our country, and we're very blessed for that. But this show is all about honoring those who didn't make it back alive and back to their families. There's been a lot going on. Power and Patriots is the only show on social media like it. We are dedicated to talking about today's MAGA military, how to make America's military great again, what's going on overseas around the world in terms of our military and national security. And we've got so much to talk about this week. It's been there is never a lack of material for this show once a week. We've always got a lot to talk about. We're going to talk about tonight how Donald Trump, playing the art of the deal, once again stared down Kim Jong-un, and Kim Jong-un's back to the table again. So again, you don't mess with that guy. You don't mess with Donald Trump. He knows what he's doing in terms of negotiations. We're also going to talk about the fact that Democrats actually aligned themselves this week with MS-13. I mean, they literally are out of ideas, out of integrity, out of a moral compass. And speaking of lack of moral compass, this week also, Chelsea Clinton throws shade at President Trump, calling him un-American and corrupt. Now, we'll talk about that. We'll talk about how my experience with the Clintons and how just disingenuous that is for Chelsea Clinton, of all people, the gall to be calling out President Trump and this administration for corruption and lack of integrity and being un-American. And then finally, we're going to close the show with a Memorial Day tribute. We're going to talk about the people that we know, the people in our lives, the people that you should know, the people that have gone before and are the reason why we can do this show tonight, the reason why we have freedom of speech, the reason why we can walk and talk and live our lives in the land of liberty. So stay tuned to the very end, because this is going to be a brilliant show about honoring those who have gone before. Memorial Day is not about recognizing those in service today or veterans that are around. Memorial Day is actually memorializing those that have gone before and given the ultimate sacrifice. And we all have stories about those of whom we've known that have gone before, and you need to know who they are too. You need to know these people. You need to know what they were involved in. You need to know why they did not come home from combat. My co-hosts, Bree Dail, U.S. Navy, Matt Dooley, U.S. Army. I'm the Air Force guy. We need a Marine. We're still looking for a good Marine. There are a lot of good Marines, I'm sure, but we're still looking for one that can come on the show as well. Bree is a combat surface warfare officer. Matt was a armored and cavalry guy. I'm an Air Force pilot and served for 20 years in 69 countries, and also had the opportunity, a dubious distinction, of actually being the military nuclear football carrier for President Bill Clinton, and have written books about that. So tonight, let's talk about North Korea. First and foremost, this week, there for about 24 hours, the North Koreans, Kim Jong-un, basically told the United States of America that we needed to acquiesce to their terms of agreement and their terms of conditions, and North Korea didn't respond very favorably to that, and Donald Trump just walked away from the table, brilliantly walked away. And 24 hours later, North Korea was back saying, no, we want to meet with you guys. We'll meet with you anytime, anywhere. We want to meet with you now. Bree, what's your take on what's going on with North Korea?
I mean, the audacity, right? I mean, last week we talked about this. They have no cards on the table, but this is in line with the talking points of North Korea. I was watching a news segment. They allowed some Western press on the ground to kind of observe their destruction, their so-called destruction of their nuclear facility. And, right. It was really interesting to hear those reporters who were reporting from the ground saying, yeah, these buildings look really new. These look like they've never been used. And they're like, yeah, I think they're kind of pulling what they've always pulled. And right. When it came to them walking away, I said, okay, give it 2 days. No, give it 1 day. Trump's going to say, okay, no deal. He's going to walk away, and because that's the art of the deal. And I mean, we have nothing to win from taking on the burden of trying to deal with the humanitarian issues in North Korea. The only thing that we are really hoping for, now that we've got our hostages back, is to kind of denuclearize that region of the world from this despot. And off camera, we were talking about how much money could be made if for that country if they just did what they should do and put their people first. And I would say with a caveat that there's a lot of work to be done humanitarian wise, and I don't see how the Kims get out alive again. So I'm sure that this was their last ditch effort to try to show some kind of force, to be reckoned with the United States, but we don't play now. So I just think it was great for our president to walk away, especially after some of their quote unquote tough talk towards our president and vice president. And then, for them to kind of scurry back to the table afterwards, with their tail between their legs, because they knew that they had been beaten in this narrative. So bravo once again to our POTUS.
Yeah, and you're exactly right. I mean, as Matt's going to, I think, tell us here in a second, you don't. I think the world is learning that when you're on the global stage with Donald Trump, he may have weaknesses, he may have faults, but when you're on the global stage with Donald Trump, I mean, if you're going head to head with him in terms of negotiation, you're going to lose every single time. So Matt, what's your take on, it was brilliantly played. I predicted that. It went once North Korea said, or President Trump said, we're not going to negotiate. June 12th off the table, and the left wing media just like swarmed in like a group of vultures, all of a sudden saying Trump can't handle this. He's unequipped. He's not qualified. He's a moron. He can't do this. And I said, you know what? It's going to come right back to him, because in about very, very soon they're going to realize, North Korea is going to realize they got played. And 24 hours later, they got played, and they came right back. Matt, your take?
Yeah, I would agree. My take on it, watching it for about 48 hours, was one of astonishment, looking at our media and how they were reporting on it. Yeah. To me, it didn't seem that hard to understand what he was doing. In any negotiation, both sides begin a maneuver before they sit down at the table, looking for the best alternative to a negotiated solution. That's negotiation 101. And as you mentioned, you're talking about a guy whose mantra, art of the deal, indicates that his strong suit is in negotiating tough deals and his ability to walk away from things. If he's got any weaknesses at all, they certainly aren't at the negotiation table. Correct. So the media, as they came in, as you said, like vultures, looking to criticize and say it's all over, it's a disaster, Donald Trump lost everything. My instinct was, well, wait a minute. You guys, meaning the media, have been wrong for the last 2.5 years about Correct. This election, where he was going to go, how successful he would be, who was telling the truth. And so you're wrong again. At a critical moment, we're looking at an opportunity to sit down at the table, and you got two sides trying to negotiate, and you're trying to declare defeat before we've even gotten on the airplane. This was, again, not only a win for Donald Trump, but it's a twofer. Not only does he get Kim to come back to the table and ask him to sit down, but he makes the media look like idiots again.
Yes. And I want to say, we talked off camera a little bit also, Matt, about what, previously administrations from President Bill Clinton, my former boss, George W. Bush, Barack Obama, would have done nothing in this regard. They would have just somehow placated. And then off camera, you talked to me about what we could have expected if Hillary Clinton had been elected. So could you share that again? That was brilliant. I mean, that was exactly the woman that I know, and what would have happened if we had somehow elected her. That's to you, Matt.
Oh, okay, yeah, you're asking me.
Yeah.
Clearly, you would have seen what we've seen. The pattern of conduct is a reset button. Pallets of cash. We would have killed North Koreans dropping out palletfuls of money. We would have completely conceded every single tenant every single thing we were asking for just to get them back to the table. We probably would have sold them uranium to ensure their nuclear program didn't have to worry about anything they had to refine at home. There's a whole category, a whole list of things that we've seen over the previous 8 years with the Obama administration, her in charge of the State Department. In the end, I'm pretty sure she would have gotten through it with maybe $500,000 to $1.5 million in her pocket, mysteriously donated her campaign financing, and we'd be in a much better position to figure out what we were going to do next with the guns pointing at us and figuring out what the hell just happened. But that's not what happened. Uncharacteristically, we're arguing from a position of strength, something we really haven't seen since Ronald Reagan.
Yeah. And Bree, I love your reaction. Yeah, I think I love the way that Matt can just like boil down. I mean, I would love to have been in combat with him, just the way he boils down things. Bree, your take on Matt's take on, because we're gonna get to the Clintons here pretty soon, but your take on Matt's take on what would have happened if we had elected another Democrat, and God forbid we would have had another Barack Obama or Hillary Clinton, flying over $150 billion of unmarked bills in an unmarked airplane in the middle of the night to buy out some sort of treaty. So, Bree, what's your take on that?
She probably would have been given the Peace Prize for it as well, landing in the war zone, being shot at, as she said she was, I think you were the pilot for that, too. Did you land and say that, you were in a combat zone? Did you get, Purple Heart from that? I think you need to approach the president, at this point, because
it would have been sniper fire, Bree. It would have been she would have come back with a amoebic dysentery. That's what she said she would have got.
As a matter of fact,
we joke about it.
Bree, you talk about Hillary's. I'm sorry, go ahead, Bree.
I said we joke about it, but it's just so absurd because it's so true. I mean, think about it. Like, what did we do with the Iranian deal? I mean, we didn't do it. Barack Obama and his cronies did it. The fact that we paid these people off, it's just. I mean, we got to count it as a loss and just be like, well, lessons learned for the future diplomats to never play like this. This is how you play, and show them what, our POTUS just did. But Matt, you're hilarious.
He is. And I just want to say, that Barack Obama's National Security Council, God, it was in charge, I'm cracking up, in charge of the negotiations with Iran, had a creative writing degree. So, Ben Rhodes had a creative writing degree, and we're putting him in charge of negotiating with the Iranians about nuclear weapons. I mean, God, you cannot make this stuff up. It's just brilliant.
Well, they were making fun of Trump's letter this week. The press was making fun of Trump's letter. Well, I have some news to you, MSN. It looks like there's a new player in the House. He knows how to communicate, unlike the guy with the creative writing degree who ended up failing that deal. Anyway,
yeah, isn't that ironic, guys? We're talking about a man who routinely, within 146 or so characters, including typos, is able to establish foreign policy coups, while the guys on the other side, who are well-written and alleged to be well-read, couldn't get themselves out of a pea-soaked paper bag when it came to diplomacy. It is the art of the deal and is the art of the irony, I think.
Yeah, and as we get ready to go to break, I want to just recount. Bree brought up the fact that about Hillary's, her Bosnia moment, her going into Bosnia and being shot at. One of my very best friends is General Rod Bishop, United States Air Force, retired, and he was the pilot of that airplane, the C-17 that went into Bosnia, and he reminds me almost weekly that, there was no sniper fire. We walked out of the airplane. We went right to get something to eat. And she was completely lying about the entire thing. I flew the airplane in there, and I was in command of the entire situation, and there was no sniper fire whatsoever. And she, as she is wont to do, we'll talk about Chelsea and her in a second, or coming up here soon, but as she is wont to do, once again, she misrepresents reality. She rewrites his history, and again, in my estimation, they set the pattern for the deep state. As we go to break here, we're going to come back. We got Bree Dail and Matt Dooley, my two amazing talk show hosts. We're also going to come back and talk about, unbelievably, in the next segment, that the Democrats are now defending MS-13, the very violent El Salvadorian gang that is raping and killing and butchering people around the country. So we'll be right back. Stay tuned to Power and Patriots. You're watching Your Voice America. We'll be right back on Memorial Day. All right, folks, thanks for coming back to us. This is Power and Patriots. I'm Buzz Patterson. I'm joined by Matt Dooley and Bree Dail. This is the only social media show on social media that talks about the military, national security, our President Donald Trump, how we're going forward and making America's military great again, making America great again. So this week we had President Trump at a conference in New York, and he actually called MS-13 animals. And the left and media just blew up. They could not believe that he was labeling MS-13 animals. In fact, what he was talking about, of course, the media wanted to characterize that as him calling all immigrants animals, but not. He wasn't doing that. He was talking about MS-13. So the media came out. Nancy Pelosi, the very next day, defended MS-13. Of course, Donald Trump being Donald Trump, he doubled down by saying they're animals. And the very next day, a MS-13 guy was arrested in New York for killing somebody, and his name was? Animal. You can't make this stuff up. So the Democrats are going to go into the November midterms and try to defend MS-13. And we're talking about national security here. So you're talking about a foreign group that infiltrates the country, that comes over here illegally, that is a domestic enemy. So MS-13. So Bree, how can the Democrats get away with this? How can Nancy Pelosi and other Democrats try to convince us, or try to take the position that MS-13, the members of MS-13, who are sworn to butcher and murder their own, are somehow angelic or are also God's children in terms of their brutality? How does this go forward?
I mean, really, it's the whole line, the whole seamless garment, whole like social justice warrior playbook to try to humanize individuals who have chosen to dehumanize themselves. So let's take a look at the fact that human beings, in of ourselves, we are rational animals. We are rational animals, and what places us apart from the animals is our rationality. So when we take a look at individuals who choose to work and live by their emotions and by violence, they are no longer using their rationality, their God-given sense of dignity. At that point, they are no better than animals. And to be quite honest, if you look at the animal kingdom, it's an insult to the animals, because they're actually living by right order, and they are actually doing what they're supposed to do. And the men and women who choose to go into this lifestyle have really dedicated themselves to living the inverse of what they're supposed to be. So in and of itself, it's an insult to animals. So I'm quite insulted, Buzz, that Nancy Pelosi wants to side with these people and say that they are rational human beings that need to be taken care of and whatnot. And I'll tell you something else, and I'll just put this on the record. I literally saw, this week also had the referendum against life in Ireland. Yes. And it fell. And what I saw shortly after that was an individual, a Jesuit, and having writing about the Jesuits and how they're very close to George Soros and here in the United States and the SJW kind of mentality. One of the leaders in this, and I'm not going to say his name, I will put it on Twitter for those of you who are interested. One of the leaders came out and he said, how can you care about, children in the womb if you don't care about children on the borders? And my mind exploded at that point. This is the type of rationality that these individuals have kind of been leading in the political sphere, and it's tiresome, and people see through the BS. So I'm glad that Nancy Pelosi made a fool of herself, and she should have made a fool of herself in front of cameras with that kind of attitude and that kind of mentality. And our POTUS was right again. These individuals are no better than the lowest of the animals.
Well, living in California, Nancy Pelosi is one of my representatives out here. I can honestly tell you that that lady needs to go away. We need to just put her out to pasture. She is actually bat crap crazy, and she has built a million upon $1 million bankroll out here by being a public servant. And I have to question how that actually happens when you're making 165K a year to be a congresswoman, and now all of a sudden you're worth several $100 million. And that's part of the deep state, I'm sure. We'll get to that in a little bit here on the show. But Matt, I think and also about we were talking offline also about this is not an existential threat. This is an internal threat. This MS-13 is not only I would say a gang on the level or equivalency of the old mob. They are running drugs. They are killing people. They're killing a lot of their own. They're sex trafficking. They're raping people. And why? I guess the Democrats really need votes that much. They want to side and align themselves with brutal El Salvadorians like MS-13. I mean, is it really? Have we gone to the point where American lives don't matter, innocents' lives don't matter, and that we can equate what MS-13 does with any other revolutionary or terrorist? I mean, it's beyond me to understand how Democrats could side with oppose President Trump, who's exactly right, by the way, and side with this brutal, evil regime of people coming across the border.
Yeah, I agree. You're talking about an organization that there's no fuzzy math here. There's no gray area in between who they are and the rest of the immigrant class, whether they're illegal or here legally. When you talk about MS-13, their motto is rape, kill, and control. I'm not really sure how much more clear you can be about where you stand. And on the subject of Nancy Pelosi and her comments about everybody's got a divine spark. Trying to smear and blur the lines between them and other immigrants, I found to be not just disingenuous, but insulting, not only to Americans who deserve to be protected and live in a peaceful country under the rule of law, but also to immigrants. Nancy Pelosi can't draw a distinction between MS-13, who are monsters, who are animals, who are killing people, raping people, and starting with the poor, starting with the immigrants among them. Those are the first people they attack. She's saying, in her eyes, there's no difference between people who are trying to come here and look for a better life and maybe struggling with how best to legally do that. No difference between them and these guys with the tattoos on their face who are out there murdering people in the streets and cutting heads off of people who are their political opponents, or going after folks and extorting them for prostitution or for drugs. To her, there's no difference. And the media stepped in right behind her and backed her play. We live in a completely interesting times. I have absolutely no idea how they're going to justify this and how they're going to fight their way through the next election, because to me, this is easy street if you're a Republican. Point to the comments it made over the last week or so and just play that again and again and again.
Yeah, over and over again.
In your competition when it's time to run for the 2018 and 2020 elections. When you look at what MS-13 stands for, clearly these guys are nowhere near any confused or gray area. And Donald Trump was very clear when he called them out and called them animals. He came back and clarified again and reemphasized. And the media both times attempted to make this about something else that it wasn't.
Yeah, they're trying to paint, I think the media and the left is trying to paint Donald Trump calling out a organization that is obviously among the most evil on the face of the planet. I mean, we're talking about ISIS type evil. We're talking about Al Qaeda type evil. Matt, you and I have been to Iraq. I've seen the victims, the babies that have been placed in ovens by ISIS, to prove a point. So I think that what's happening here is the Democrats and the left is trying to somehow conflate, Trump's comments about that kind of evil with all immigrants, both legal and illegal. about brown people. That's not what he's doing. He's calling out a scourge in this country, a scourge that's contributing to the opioid crisis, a scourge that's contributing to the crime on the streets, and this, you pointed out earlier, Matt. This is not just MS-13 going after U.S. citizens. This is MS-13 going after their fellow immigrants. This is them trying to control, much like ISIS does overseas. First. Yeah, much like ISIS does with its own, with its own people in Iraq and Syria. This is an organization that goes after its own people for gain and for power. And that kind of evil. We talked about this a couple of weeks ago. That kind of evil exists. I don't think the left really understands the depths, and I think we've all seen it. They don't understand the depths to which this is real. This is a struggle between right and wrong, and righteous and unrighteous, and it's really hard to explain that when you have people like Nancy Pelosi and our media, our mainstream media, buddying up with them and trying to somehow defend the MS-13. Bree, am I wrong?
Well, I don't see how any rational individual who is in this country could walk away hearing Nancy Pelosi saying that and say, oh, yeah, I agree with her. I have no clue. If people are that brainwashed as to listen to someone like that justify MS-13, then, I mean, frankly, I don't believe it, because we take a look at who's our president, even though everybody said in the media that Hillary was going to win. So I know that the American people are listening to this and are hearing the BS. But you made a point about ISIS, and I think we need to go back. I posted a tweet earlier this week, or actually just I think yesterday. A friend of mine, Ed Penton, is in Mosul, or he was in Mosul, was going through and taking a look at what was left. I bring this up is because you take a look at some of the Democrat-run cities right now, and they look very similar to war-torn Iraq. And what's the next step? Okay, so you have no police power, you have no really rule of law taking place. These guys come in, right? MS-13 comes in, and they start to rule the roost there, and the corruption is there, and the drugs are there, and make no mistake, these guys have an agenda, and they are wanting to make money. Don't think that they won't be bought off by individuals who have nefarious plans for our country, i.e. terrorists. Like MS-13, they're terrorists, but this is another level. ISIS, they have smuggled these guys in. We know that there's a Muslim Brotherhood network in this country. We know that do exist. So whether or not these guys are cooperating, I would not doubt it, because just like over in the Middle East, many people capitulated to ISIS then. So be prepared to, if you want to side, Nancy, with MS-13, you might as well side with ISIS. You might as well side with the Muslim Brotherhood. Oh, wait, you guys already have.
That's exactly right. And I think that it's amazing to me. There's such a movement. There has been a movement for quite a while in this country, where the liberals and the Democrats have chosen to embrace America's enemies, because it does a disservice to America. And we're going to come back to this after the break when we talk about Chelsea Clinton now, and along with her mother, going around the world talking about the evils of the Trump administration in America. But Matt, getting back to where we are right now with the fact that we need secure borders, the fact that we need to stop these people from coming into our country. Very briefly, we've got about a minute before we go to break. Very briefly, what can the U.S. military do to stem the tide here and to enforce the laws that exist on the books?
I think what you're hitting on, Buzz, is the inability of the left to draw a hard line between those who are evil and the rest of us. It is sheer folly to think that you can reason with evil. And for all of the talk about the divine spark, Lucifer had a divine spark too, but he made his choice. Yes. Guys like MS-13 made their choice. Guys like ISIS have made their choice. And so the U.S. military and our larger homeland security apparatus has the responsibility to protect our borders and to keep the bad guys out. What the U.S. military has the most use for domestically is to remission other folks like Border Patrol so they can be released to actually do their security mission. And if necessary, backfill. The National Guard does a pretty good job of operating in both domains. Thankfully, I don't think we're there yet, but the ability to send a few folks down to the southern border and augment to kind of stem the flow of the surge we typically get this time of year is particularly useful. And that's something Donald Trump's got going.
Yeah, he does. And we come back from break. Again, I'm joined by, you're watching Power and Patriots. I'm joined by my two great hosts, Matt Dooley and Bree Dail. When we come back, we're going to talk about the Clintons who just will not go away, the gift that keeps on giving. Chelsea's been out there this week throwing shade at President Trump. And I mean, the gall of this young lady to be talking about corruption and discord. So when you stay tuned, we'll be right back on Power and Patriots talking about Chelsea Clinton and her disagreement with Donald Trump. We'll be right back. Thanks. Hello, America. This is Buzz Patterson. You're watching Power and Patriots. This is our special Memorial Day show. Thanks so much for being with us. This is the only social media show that talks about our U.S. military, our national security. We talk about it with my brilliant co-hosts Bree Dail and Matt Dooley. Navy, Army, Air Force, we got it covered. So you're where you need to be in terms of what's going on around the world and with our military. So this week, as most of you know, I used to work for President Bill Clinton. I was an Air Force officer, a pilot. I was the military aide to President Bill Clinton back in the 1990s. I carried the nuclear football. I actually lived in the White House. I had a bedroom. I had an office. I got to know them very, very well. I left after I retired from the Air Force. I left and wrote my first best-selling book, Dereliction of Duty. So a couple of days ago, Chelsea Clinton goes on. She's pushing a book now. So she goes on the international stage. She's talking to British media, and she starts to talk to the Brits about the fact that Trump degrades what it means to be American. And now she talks about President Trump and his administration, their cruelty, incompetence, and corruption. Oh my God. And I saw this, wow. I could not believe the fact that here's Chelsea Clinton. And so I tweeted today, I said, Chelsea, your mother, your father, and you are the most delusional and morally degraded people I've ever met. So how do you have the gall to talk about corruption and incompetency? So I want to talk about how the Clintons are still out there and how they're continuing to go around the world pushing books and doing their writing, their speaking thing for their own personal, wealth and financial well-being. And at the same time, they're doing it on an international stage. I mean, Hillary last week was in Australia throwing shade at President Trump, and yesterday Chelsea's in England throwing down shade at President Trump. In fact, when the reporter for the British media asked her what she thought about President Trump possibly coming to the UK for a visit, she said, "You know what? I do a lot of protesting, and I would urge the British people to protest President Trump as well because his administration is corrupt and evil." So, Bree, well, on one hand, I really appreciate the damage that the Clintons do to the Democratic Party on a daily basis. On the other hand, I just find it remarkably almost treasonous that they're out going around the world trying to undermine our current administration. There used to be a thing in our country where politics stopped at the water's edge. Well, that is obviously no longer true when we have Chelsea and Hillary Clinton going around the world, bashing the president and U.S. foreign policy. So, Bree, your take on Chelsea Clinton?
What class, what dignity. I want to be just like her. I want to be just like her. Persistence around the world, I believe, is what the name of this book. What have you persisted in other than your lies, your family's lies? You could have done something, Chelsea, with your life. You could have actually gone on the ground and actually worked with the Clinton Foundation instead of stealing its money for your wedding. You could have worked and helped people. You could have changed the legacy that your father and mother have set up for you. But instead instead you followed through with the legacy. Thank you for showing us that genetics sometimes also shows the corruptness coming from some of these individuals. It's just, like mother, like daughter. But I want to have a quote from. I'm going to quote from what she said, and then I want to have a little second to kind of talk a little bit on the media in England right now. So first, quote: "Not only do I want an administration that isn't venal, corrupt, and focused on making life harder for millions of Americans, I also want a competent administration," she said. "So for me, the larger question is the collusion of cruelty and incompetence and corruption that we see across this administration." I mean, your mothers, your fathers. Which administration are you talking? Oh, you're trying to talk about Trump. You're talking to Trump, to a foreign press that has just put a gag order, or the same country that's put a gag order, and the press has complied against Tommy Robinson on the right, who is just speaking out against grooming gangs. It's okay though when it has to deal with women in the UK being raped. As long as you get your payday, Chelsea, that's all that really matters, right? Wow. I mean, what a role model for today's women.
Yeah, I have, as most of you know, I know the Clintons personally very, very well, and it's remarkable to me. It really is remarkable that they continue along this path. I thought they would have figured this out a long time ago, but apparently they're just this corrupt. They're just this narcissistic. They're just this, looking for the next paycheck. They're just this incapable of being introspective in terms of their behavior and the damage that it causes. I mean, seriously. I mean, Hillary's still out there, Bill's still out there, Chelsea's still out there, and you're exactly right, Bree. Chelsea and Hillary don't give a crap about women's rights. Otherwise they wouldn't have been taking millions and millions of dollars from Saudi Arabians who refuse up until recently to allow women to drive or to vote. They don't care about the average American or the Black American or the Hispanic American who is under the socioeconomic bubble right now, living in Detroit or LA or Chicago. They don't care that Chicago has the highest murder rate in the capital and in the country, and their former chief of staff, Rahm Emanuel, is the mayor. They don't care because that does not behoove their narrative. It does not behoove their next payday. So it's I pray that Hillary or Chelsea runs in 2020. I pray, dear God, I pray, because that again is the gift that keeps on giving. But it does not serve American citizens. It does not serve our current administration. In all hell is broken loose when we have former administration officials going around the globe like John Kerry trying to undermine our current president. Matt, what say you?
Yeah, going back to Chelsea. I wasn't sure where she was going with this. And when I heard what she had said to the Brits, a couple of things became clear in my mind. First and foremost, that she was never going to vote for her mother and father again, because they certainly fit the template of what she didn't like. The second thing is that it affirmed what I suspect is that she's desperate for relevance. Her gig at CNN failed. She was virtually a non-entity in her mother's campaign. And since I saw her on the tarmac when she was 14 years old in Bosnia, the difference between the two of us is I actually had a career that was impactful and meaningful, and she hasn't. So what she's going to happen next, I just don't know. I'll have to quote Ted Kennedy here, and we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. Ultimately, I think Chelsea Clinton has a big problem, is that she's got a legacy she has to distance herself from, and she hasn't accepted that. She doesn't understand that yet. And the second thing is, even if she doesn't get some distance between herself and her mother and father, she's got to stand for something. And I couldn't tell you politically where her views are, and I don't think she could tell you either.
No, that's a really good point. I was at the White House when she was a senior in high school, and a freshman in college. In fact, I was on the flight that took her out to Stanford on Air Force One with her parents to put her into for her freshman year at Stanford. So, I was around Chelsea frequently. I never got a real sense that she really understood the gravity of her position as the only child of the first family. I don't think she ever knew anything more than she was going to use her parents for her future well-being financially, and I think that that's what she's doing with the Clinton Foundation. I think that she's one of these people that has surrounded herself with the Clinton sycophants, and then that's what they do is they try to be as inobtrusively loyal as they possibly can to the Clintons. And Matt, you were talking about that flight into Tuzla, and we talked about this offline earlier today. I was on that airplane bringing President Clinton and Hillary and Chelsea into Tuzla, and that's a long story. But I will tell you that airplane, was not enamored with a whole bunch of great Americans. It had Bill Clinton, it had Hillary Clinton, it had Chelsea Clinton, it had John Podesta, it had Madeleine Albright, it had Sandy Berger, it had a bunch of people that have proven themselves to be nothing short of traitors to our nation, and certainly very damaging to our nation in terms of what happened in those years and what happened post Clinton administration. But as we go forward, Bree, what's your thoughts on? We got about 5 minutes for our next break. Bree, what's your thoughts on Chelsea Clinton's future? Do you think she'll run in 2020? Do you think her mom will run? What do you think? What do you foresee happening with the Clinton Foundation and Clinton as a family going forward?
Okay, so first off, I just want to make a little quick point that maybe Chelsea is just a perfect example of what happens when it takes a village to raise your child. I don't know, that maybe she's the product of it, and this is a perfect example, like someone who is just
the village idiot,
completely, the village idiot. To be honest with you, she has had every opportunities that people have to struggle for. So I think it's ironic for her to be going around talking about persistence. Persistence in what? You've been given everything. You've been given everything. Do I think she's going to run? I think that her parents are probably filling her head with narcissism, but she's not going to win because she's vanilla. There's no personality there. There's no dynamic. At least with with her father, he had a personality. With her mother, I mean, I don't know, she has a personality. She kind of reminds me of a robot at times, the way that she laughs, and she doesn't really have a personality. And that's actually one of the things that the Democrats said was the reason why she failed is that she couldn't connect with the American people. That's kind of problematic when you're, trying to run for president. Do I think that Hillary's going to run? No, I think she's going to be in a deep, dark cell somewhere, and I think it's going to happen pretty soon. That's what I think. To be honest with you, there are individuals who know where bodies are buried, possibly quite literally, with regards to the Clintons, and I think they're going to have their comeuppance. They've been playing pretty fast and loose in the last few years with the power that they have. They haven't been smart, and I think it's gonna take place. But I do have a message to our POTUS if he's watching. Sir, you are elected and you are fulfilling your promises. Take a look at what's coming down the line. I know that you're supporting the justice system, going in and crossing all T's and dotting all I's regarding these individuals. But we only have a certain amount of time. And, even the full 8 years, it may take that long, but let's not assume that we've got the full 8 years. Let's get these guys while we still can, because we don't know what the future is going to have after your term ends, sir. And you have the ability to do it now.
Absolutely. I would echo that, Bree. I hope that POTUS is watching or his family's watching. Knowing the Clintons and knowing what they've all the crimes they've committed over the years, I think it's if Hillary Clinton had been elected, I don't think we would have seen this FBI informant or the stuff going on with Uranium One, Fusion GPS. This would all have been just a non-starter and have been buried long, which is what they were banking on. They were banking on Hillary winning, so this would all just go away. But President Trump, you're in charge now. we all, Americans, would breathe a huge sigh of relief if you would just prosecute these people, bring them justice. There's only one level of justice in this country. There's not two. There's not one for the rest of us, and the second one for the name starting with the C, the Clintons. So please, President Trump, please prosecute these people and bring it to a head. And there's a lot of people that need to go down right now. I know that you're on it. Folks, you're watching Power and Patriots. We're going to go to break here. When we come back, this is the Memorial Day tribute show. When we come back, we're all going to share personally some stories that I think will grip you, some stories of heroes that have gone forward before us, who paid the ultimate sacrifice, who gave their lives in defense of our country. So please stay tuned. Power and Patriots will be right back. Hello, folks. Welcome back. This is Buzz Patterson. You're watching Power and Patriots. I'm along. My hosts are Bree Dail and Matt Dooley, and this is Memorial Day weekend 2018. And as all former military members, we all have stories to tell about friends and associates and colleagues, and also the remembrances of those of us who have served and given the ultimate sacrifice. Memorial Day is not about celebrating veterans. It's about celebrating those who have given their lives in defense of our liberties, our rights, our freedom. Matt, please start with what your take is, what your thoughts are as we celebrate Memorial Day 2018.
Buzz, we're in the 100-year anniversary window of World War I, 1914 to 1918. So my thoughts are about that lost generation. Those veterans aren't with us anymore, and it was really, for 53,000 dead Americans, that's significant in just 18 months. But when you look at how many soldiers died in Europe, 18 million dead in the span of 4 years, an entire generation face down in the mud. We do ourselves a great disservice when we forget that. The war to end all wars didn't. And it happened again and again and again. And that's the lesson. So my hat's off in remembrance, solemn remembrance, to the end of the Victorian era that occurred there, and what set the conditions for the rise of America to become a superpower in the 20th century that occurred then. I also want to remember my 21 classmates. When I was at West Point, there were about 1,200 of us who graduated. 21 of us have gone on to our great reward. And it's a reminder that life is fleeting. They're all heroes to me. And then the 44 comrades who were assigned either directly to 3rd Armored Cavalry Regiment or attachments with us in 2007 through 2008, as the 3rd Armored Cavalry Regiment went into Mosul and Nineveh province. We certainly gave a lot better than we got, but there were 44 who paid the ultimate sacrifice during that tour with me.
Any that stand out, Matt, in terms of your service in Iraq specifically? Any that you want to name by name or by accomplishment?
Captain Rowdy Inman, he died in a green on blue fratricide incident, which is a reminder that we're dealing with an intractable, ideologically motivated enemy, and that's a little different. It makes it harder when those who should be your allies are motivated by an ideology with religious aspects, and betrayal is a part of it. And we lost a good soldier that day because of it.
Yeah, well, God bless him. God bless his family and friends. Bree, what are your memories now? I know that you've got you want to talk about some SEALs, and also a close associate of yours in the Navy.
Okay, so I'm going to quickly let everyone know that I'm going to be posting a story that was written in 2011 about these guys. That it has their pictures, so you can go ahead and take a look. But where I live here in Virginia Beach, we were hit pretty hard in 2011. I was just about to go on deployment when this happened, that SEAL Team 6, and kind of like a step back, just so that people know, when Obama made the announcement that Osama bin Laden had been killed, and shortly afterwards, the PR stunts were coming out talking about how it was SEAL Team 6, and then There was leaks that SEAL Team 6 came out of Virginia Beach. Some of the individuals there, family members were quickly had to be moved because there were, threats on this. That's an OPSEC violation. Should never have happened.
Right.
Unfortunately, a few months down the line, a large group of those individuals who were there that day were downed in an aircraft. And those individuals and their deaths were covered very shortly and then kind of covered up because there were questions on how this took place, why the aircraft went down. There's mixed reports on the open source whether or not they were shot at or if they had a malfunction. There was also mixed reports that there was a flight manifest change last minute to have individuals who they did not know who were foreign nationals on board their ship, their aircraft. So there's still questions that I think will never be answered because a lot of this was very highly classified operations, and part of that will also be about the last moments of these guys. But I think it's really important to understand that when you go into the tip of the spear, every time they go and they are told to go, and they're told to go oftentimes within a very short amount of time, the family members are prepared to never see them again. And that's something to understand when we go, to Memorial Day services tomorrow. I certainly will be doing that. Another individual that I want to talk about is a sailor that I lost last year who was a good friend of mine and stood the watch with me often at night. Marcelo De La Fuente actually was diagnosed with cancer only months after he left with honorable service from the Navy. Who knows if there were actual aspects to his service that caused that cancer, but it metastasized. And he reached out to me on Facebook shortly after he was diagnosed, and he told me that our conversations standing the watch at night in Combat Information Center brought him back into the Catholic faith. And he told me that he was preparing for death and that he was going to fight as hard and as fast as he could to try to extend his life. And he went through some very painful surgeries and chemo to be able to extend his life for his son's sake. And we thought he beat it. And then out of the blue, our shipmates heard last year that he had passed. And it was devastating to the crew. He was the first one to have passed. Since then, we've had 4 more others pass from our crew alone. And it's a family when you deploy. So again, Marcel De La Fuente, he was awesome. He was awesome. He was a good man, and I really do miss him. But I know he's in a better place. And so those are the individuals that I want to salute today. But there are so many. There are so many that we could speak about all day. And I just tomorrow I'm going to be praying for them and praying and mourning their loss.
Yes, I as well, and I think it's really kind of neat that we can put a name and a face on service, and I think that most Americans, 99% probably don't even, hopefully they understand, but they probably don't understand the true gravity of the day as they barbecue and drink beer and swim. I hope that they will understand that there are millions and millions have gone forward before us that allow us to do what we're doing right now. I've got 2 I want to bring up, 2 friends of mine. My first roommate in the Air Force, Lieutenant Mike Hodge, was an Air Force pilot, a brilliant guy. I met him at pilot training, going through Air Force pilot training. He was my roommate in Charleston, South Carolina. We had a lot of fun together. We drank a lot of beers together. We did a lot of really cool things together. And Mike crashed on takeoff from Sigonella Naval Air Station in Sicily, Italy, in 1994. He lost an engine on takeoff, and it threw the engine through the shrapnel into the main part of the airplane. And as Mike tried to turn around to land back at Sigonella in the opposite direction, he was overcome by the smoke and fumes, and didn't quite make it. He was a little bit short of making it. I know Mike's parents and his family very well, and Mike was just a superb guy, a great pilot, and was everything that I think any of us would aspire to be in terms of our service. I also was very proud and honored to be the squadron commander for Captain Tim Schaefer. He was an Air Force pilot that flew for me at Travis Air Force Base in Northern California. Tim was one of my best pilots. He took an assignment to go overseas to Ramstein Air Force Base in Germany, and he was the pilot of the airplane that crashed in Dubrovnik, Croatia, that killed Ron Brown, the Secretary of Commerce for President Bill Clinton. Now, to this day, I don't know exactly what happened in that crash. I do know that Tim, the safety accident board that came back and said it was possibly a pilot error, I don't buy that at all. I think that there's a thing called meakening where your navigational aids in an airplane can be diverted, and I believe that Tim was meekened because he and I had just flown a check ride, a qualification ride for him a couple of weeks prior to that, and he was the best I'd ever seen at flying that particular approach. So Tim Schaefer, God bless you, your family, and as we go forward, Tim and Mike, you're always in my prayers, always in my thoughts. So guys, as we go into tomorrow, we go into Memorial Day, Matt, what should Memorial Day mean to Americans? And we know what it means to those who serve, but what should it mean to Americans? We've got about 4 minutes.
I would say that Memorial Day weekend, as you so eloquently stated, is about those of us who gave the ultimate sacrifice. But as Americans, whether you served in the military or not, whether you know someone who served or currently serves or someone who paid the ultimate sacrifice, Memorial Day is about recognizing that those who've done so, who've gone ahead of us, did so because they believed in an idea. America is an idea as much as it is a place. That idea, that flag, that anthem is not about some idea that we're perfect. It's the idea that we can be better tomorrow than we were yesterday. And that America presents the greatest opportunity, the greatest flexible system of governance upon which we least disagree, hooked to capitalism, hooked to this idea that you can work hard and come here and be a part of something that makes it better than you were yesterday and makes it better for your kids. That's what we all go and fight for. And when the bullets start flying, we fight for each other. But in the grander scheme of things, folks won't go sacrifice if they don't believe in the idea that is America. Mm-hmm. And that's what Memorial Day is about, is remembering those who bought us the opportunity to continue this great experiment.
That's absolutely correct. And, and Bree, as we go to close, your thoughts about what Memorial Day should mean, and I really want to bring this home. I don't think we're preaching to people, but I think people need to understand, why a lot of military vets are unhappy when NFL football players don't stand for the national anthem. I mean, that flag was paid for with a huge price, and we have all worn it on a particular shoulder. So, I mean, I don't think it's a preachy to say that we would like and hope that our fellow citizens will respect what the flag actually means. And so Memorial Day, to me, just speaks volumes to what the flag is all about.
Yeah, I mean, the red stripe means it actually represents the blood of the Patriots who had preserved this land. I am wearing today the poppy, and I wanted to show that to Matt. I'm wearing the poppy today. The English wear it on their Remembrance Day. I think it is a good thing for us to also attribute to Memorial Day. It would set apart this aspect of remembering and mourning the loss of those who did pay the ultimate sacrifice. I remember one time I was asking my father, because I had heard someone say that America was exceptional. And, being proud, I was like, yeah, we're exceptional in America, right? But at the end of the day, what makes us exceptional is the fact that our founding fathers, they got to choose what type of country they were going to build. No other country in the world has had that ability to do that, to say we are going to be a republic, and this is how we're going to stand our constitutions. It's amazing to think that is what we live for, and all the opportunities that we have here. No other country has that. They try to emulate what we have now, But no other country has the opportunity to say, you live in a ghetto, it doesn't matter. You could become a millionaire. You just have to work hard. You have to study hard. And we've seen this within our leaders. Our good leaders have had that. So that is what it means. Just remember that there are people who have never been able to come home. And also, if I just a quick word, I've said it for the last few weeks, buddy check, guys, today, if you can, at least one veteran, you could save a life.
Absolutely. We're going to close tonight with this, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for watching Power and Patriots. We're going to close with this. As we go into Memorial Day tomorrow, we're not going to push our websites or any of that kind of stuff. We're just going to say this. Please pray. Please know that as you go to sleep tonight, all across the nation, across the world, that you have veterans, you have men and women who are wearing the flag, who are wearing the uniform, that are defending our rights, our freedoms, our ability. America is exceptional. The U.S. is exceptional, and there's a reason for that. So as we close tonight, we'll see you next week. But God bless America. God bless our military. Thank you for watching Power and Patriots. And again, remember those who've gone before. Good night and God bless.